Okay, so I actually have an amazing selection of fabrics here today that are from Spoonflower. They're all custom painted as watercolor paintings, and then I had them printed out as swatches. So I also then, after the swatches, had them printed out as larger yards of fabric. So the first thing I want to do is go over these swatches, which I have washed, just to look at the color and the size changes. So this is the Performance Pique fabric, I believe, and the colors do look as vibrant, and it does seem like the synthetic fabrics hold the color better, and if you're paying more for a custom designed and custom painted fabric, then maybe at this point at least I think what it means is I'm going to go with particular fabrics because I do want to have the look of my painting. So if you look at the size of this, this was a 8 by 8 inch swatch before it got washed, so it's still 8 inches on this side. And on the other side it is, so it's 7 3/4, just a little bit more than 7 3/4. So that's how much this fabric shrunk, which is not that much, and that's to be expected because this is a synthetic. But as you can see, it's washed very well, and I also tumble dried it on low, and it doesn't have any difference with the printing and the color or pilling or anything. And I think this is the cotton poplin. And I can see, and a part of this is of course that this hasn't been ironed, so once it's ironed everything will look smoother, and maybe the colors will look a little bit smoother and spruced up too. But it is obvious that this is not as bright as the synthetic ones after being washed, and it also shrunk a bit more. So this is about 7 3/4 on this side and 7 1/2 on this side. So you can see that it shrunk about 1/2 inch in that direction. So that's to be expected again because this is cotton. This is on the poly crepe de Chine fabric, and it's the same print, and you can just see that the colors take off much more. I had this poly crepe de Chine scrap that I had printed out, and it was again these swatches. And these prints are no longer up because they were just too kooky for prints, really. Let me show the measurements of the fabric to see how much it shrunk. So this is about an even 8 inches. It's a little bit less than 8, less like 1/8 of an inch less on that side, and it's about 1/8 of an inch less on that side. So it looks like this shrinks 1/8 of an inch on both sides, which isn't very much at all. What I've done here is I've added fabric paint, and this is the Jacquard Lumiere fabric paint that I added, and I've never used it before, but it was supposed to be the best that you could use, and since I'm putting it on expensive fabric, I didn't want to just buy cheap paint. So what I did was I added some pearl whitish color in the fabric paint into the center of these fireflies, and it really makes them pop. And then you have to iron the back of it at the suitable temperature for the fabric. It's kind of a hassle, but if you're doing it as a little touch, which is what I thought I was going to do with all of these paintings that were on the fabric, which is do a little bit of a touch on it so that it sparkles a little bit, but it doesn't take over. So you can see that also for these trees, is that I used just a little bit of this glow. It's called the halo paint, and it gives this beautiful little glow to that tree line. And you don't have to use too much, and you don't want to use too much because it's already a painted, a custom designed fabric based on a painting. So because it's already custom designed, you only want to add a little bit of glimmer to it. And also it prevents it from looking kind of tacky, which if you added too much fabric paint, it could end up looking not very sort of sophisticated. It worked just fine on the poly crepe de Chine, and I washed this after I ironed it, and this paint came back just fine. So now I wanted to review my sort of Spoonflower haul for the moment. And all of these have been washed and dried on low. I'm not necessarily going to dry this again, but I did want to wash and dry it once so I can see what happened to it. And this is on the poly crepe de Chine, and this is one of their limited fabric options, but I like this so much. I only ordered a yard, but I liked it so much that I ordered 2 more yards because I really do think it'll make a beautiful dress. I mean, you could even wear this to somebody's summer wedding if you can sew well enough to do that. I got this out of a bouquet that I did in one of my paintings, and then I sort of played with it until it became a good fabric print, but that's what it was inspired by. And it really does make one of the prettiest fabric prints that I have seen, so I'm very glad. You don't want to wear something that looks ugly and then people ask where you got it and you're like, oh, well, I made that. It feels very much like satin to me, like some kind of satin, even though it's not satin. It's great for pillowcases, I think, again, because you want to make your pillowcases out of something that doesn't have too much of a nap to it. So I don't know that I'm actually going to use this for just plain old pillowcases. It's kind of too pretty for that. Maybe cushions or maybe something like a skirt, but I kind of feel like it's a nice display fabric and it's nice and heavy. It's not as thin as the poly crepe de Chine, which is, like I said, very chiffon-y feeling. This almost feels like a thin satin. So, and again, you can see how this is printed on just the one side. On the back it's just completely blank, because this is of course printed using a printer, because it's a painting that they've transferred onto plain fabric. So if you are making something like a scarf, you're going to have to fold it over and make it double-sided and quilt it. You can't actually make a scarf the way you do with something like from Joann Fabrics, but everything else, you know, if it's clothing, should work fine. And this was inspired by flowers that I had for some Arabic calligraphy that I was doing. And again, I plan on in the original painting that this was inspired from. These little dots were done with gold, you know, gold paint. So it looked like basically liquid gold on the painting. And I plan on doing that with the fabric paint after this is made into something, because you don't want to cover the whole thing with paint and then cut away most of it. So I'm going to make it into whatever I'm making first and then add touches of gold fabric paint. And I really like how luminous this is, and I also like how sort of happy it is. I really have undervalued up till now having a white ground, because usually I have that in watercolor paintings for a lot of botanical paintings, but not on fabric. I usually buy darker fabrics that usually have dark grounds or medium to dark grounds, and so this is really, this custom designing has really let me see how cool it would be to use white grounds, because it just looks more like a painting. This is off of some lovely ink pieces that I did. I did an ink painting of a woman called the Queen of Hearts, and it had all this beautiful textile design in it. And so I decided to redo some of those designs and make them bigger and turn them into this fabric. And to me it feels very much like a sort of cool Alice in Wonderland kind of Wonderland chess checkerboard kind of theme. So I think I'm going to make some kind of a cool wrap dress out of this. Now this is white again, and it's got that purpley look to it, and it's actually an uneven purple. There's darker purple and lighter purple just like it was in the ink, so it looks beautiful. It looks like somebody painted with the ink on this Performance Pique fabric. And there's actually 3 yards of this, but it's not the same print. So there's 3 different ink, there's 3 different ink patterns that I did, and all of them are a little bit different. So this one looks a little bit different. As you can see, it's like denser, and it has more of a border look to it, and this is more wide open space. And then the last one has a slightly more different look to it. It's got more parallels and stuff like that, but I thought a yard of each together, using some of it for the skirt and using some of it for the blouse, would make a beautiful wrap dress. This is a beautiful ink textile that was, I did it in green ink on watercolor paper, and again there's lighter and darker parts in the green ink, so it does this amazing thing in the textile. I don't even know if it's showing up in the video, but there's light and dark spots, and it makes this beautiful luscious sort of mossy green. And I think that I'll try to make a blouse out of this or something, because it's just so pretty. And I was going to use this for a bed sheet, so I think that'll work fine. And again, this needs to be ironed, and we sort of left this in the dryer for a day or two, which wasn't a good idea, but didn't really have the time to take it out that day, so, well, that happens sometimes. But apart from the wrinkles, this is a beautiful fabric. Again, it's a little bit less bright than the cattails that were printed out on the Silky Faille, or Silky Faille, and this is for the pillowcases, this is for the bed sheet. So I think that one of the great things of having the custom-made fabric is I can get the same print that I made also in different fabrics for different parts of the room. So I think that's exciting too. This is the Tiffany stained glass painting that I did, and I turned it into a textile, and I do think that these squares got just a bit too small. And I really think it's pretty, I like it, but what I was imagining was something closer to the bigger purple butterflies that I had printed out. And this seems to have washed just fine too. This is called the Eco Canvas, and so it's some kind of recycled polyester sort of canvas, and I think it's better than getting the linen because I think the linen might have lost the color a bit more. I'm not sure because I haven't tried it, but I'm assuming. And obviously it would have shrunk more. But I think this will make a lovely tablecloth, and then I'm going to have a second tablecloth on hand with the larger print. So I think that will be really exciting. So that's the last of my fabric for now. I did have 2 more fabrics that I ordered. The Raja pillow and the magic carpet, and this one was reordered so you don't see that kind of seam there. And they didn't print out as well, so I'm going to have to reorder them, and Spoonflower was really good about it. They told me that they'd either reprint it or refund my money, and they refunded my money and told me that I should try getting it on a different fabric than the Kona cotton, because for some reason this particular print, and I don't know why, I don't know if it has to do with certain colors or what, but this particular print didn't print well on the Kona cotton.